Good afternoon. I'm Carrie Hoover with Selig Film News, and I'm here talking to Eric Shuman of the short film Proxy. Thanks for coming in today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
And we got to talk to you a little bit on the red carpet last night. So are you having fun? I mean, welcome to Dallas.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. My film showed last night, and it's showing today again. And the reception was really great, and the audience, laughed at the parts that I hoped they'd laughed at, which is, always a good sign.
Always.
So yeah, and everyone has been really welcoming, and I'm really enjoying Dallas.
Yeah. Okay. So this, correct me if I'm wrong, this was a short film that was part of your MFA, right?
Yeah. So I'm at Columbia University
Nice.
doing my master's program there. It's like, I wish I didn't sound like pretentious or something saying it, but
Ivy Leaguers.
yeah, I know, right? But it's a great program, and
Sure.
I learned a huge amount there, and I wouldn't have been able to make this film without it. And so you can make kind of like 2 films in your thesis years.
Sure.
And so this is the first one that I made.
Okay. Now, I was on your website, actually, and there is plans to turn it into a feature, correct?
Yes, there are.
And so I actually, film students, I want to address you, need to go check out his website. You'll have to give them your website name, because there's a whole proposal of how this is going to go down and how this will be developed. And it's really interesting to look at if you've never gone through that kind of development before.
Yeah, so the website, it's ericschuman.com. That's ERICSCHUMAN.com. And you can find it on there. It's kind of call it like a prospectus or something like that. And yeah, it's kind of like trying to pitch the film and give the background of it, and a lot of work went into it to try and just make it so that investors are kind of really understanding where we're coming from and where we want to go with the project.
Okay, so let's get down to the project, the
Yes.
13-minute version of Proxy. Now, I noticed, so you wrote it.
I co-wrote it with
You co-wrote it.
with Ingrid Dietrichs, who's a colleague of mine at
Yeah,
school.
and also a producer, I think?
Yes.
Yeah. You directed it. You did not shoot it.
I did not shoot it.
Now, you're a cinematographer by trade, is that right?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So it's always like a thorny territory about whether or not I'm going to shoot my own stuff, and I've never ended up doing so. And
Really?
Yeah, I don't want to, I guess, because I love shooting and I love being a cinematographer, but when I'm on set and I make my own material, I really just want to be focused on the actors and the story. And I can get so nerdy thinking about the camera and the f-stop and the lighting and that sort of stuff, and making sure my ISO is correct for the scene and for the camera itself. So when I'm on set, I want to be really focused on just what I'm doing and what's in front of me and the movie itself, rather than whether the focus should be shifting in a certain moment.
Are you pretty good at being able to just take your hands off of that?
I've gotten a lot better. It's
you got to
hard.
get up there and make the switch.
I have a really fantastic assistant director, my friend Tim O'Connor, who I went to college with, who's now in grad school with me, and we kind of set up some ground rules for when this sort of thing is happening for me, which is that I just leave set when they're doing the lighting, and I go off and hang with my actors, even if I don't need to be, just so that they can do their work. And it's also just about hiring the right people.
Right.
So the cinematographers I've worked with, the cinematographer for Proxy is named Angelos Rampolos, and he's amazing and really brought a huge amount to the project, and I'm super glad he came on, and because he was there, I really didn't have to worry about anything.
Yeah. Okay, so how does your work as a cinematographer, I mean, you have a huge background in that. Do you feel like that influences your storytelling style, the way you look at your characters and move through your story?
Absolutely. It influences kind of when I move the camera, I'd say mostly. I like zooms a lot, and I like camera movement and dollies a lot, and I feel like with a background as a cinematographer, I know the realistic expectations that I can bring to what a cinematographer is doing for me.
Sure.
So it means I can't have 8 crazy camera moves or something going on, because that's just not going to be tenable in a 12-hour day, or the 5.5-hour day that we had on this movie. I'd say that, and then also the lighting is a big focus of how I want to tell my stories, and a lot of the background work that I give my DP goes into the lighting references for the film, whether it's paintings, photographs, or other movies.
Yeah. Okay, so was that kind of challenging for this film? Because, I mean, you're in a kind of a roadside motel, which are notorious for there is no overhead lighting.
Right.
About half the time the lamps don't work.
Yeah.
So how did you approach that?
Working in the hotel?
Yeah.
I went to a lot of hotels. I'd say that's kind of how I approach it, and tried to like find the right one. And the people at this one were amazing. They let us have full reign of it, and use their backroom space too, and everything. And there was a lot of lighting from outside for almost the entirety of the film. Whenever they were inside, I think there's only one scene where there's an interior light on for the inside.
Right.
And also the actors were staying there, and so it kind of worked out.
Let's get a little bit deeper into the story. Another thing about the website is there's a little blip on there about someone in your life that kind of sparked, a memory that sparked the story. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. When I was growing up, there's this girl that lived down the street from me who had alopecia, so she was hairless. And she ended up being the girl that I had a crush on until like 5th grade. I had my first kiss with her. And, looking back on it, I never really thought about the fact that she didn't have hair or was hairless. And I remember there was this kid, Tim, who in the 3rd grade, he came up to me and he was like, "How's your bald girlfriend doing?" And then we like went out onto the field and it was snowing. And, we were going to fight about it. And he was wearing this huge blue a snow coat. And like the only thing that I could come up with was like, "Yeah, you fat blueberry." But like that experience of like having a crush on her, having all that really informed this film in terms of a relationship between like two people, one person who feels outside and one person who's kind of forced to be on the outside because of how she looks.
Yeah. Okay, so there's another aspect of the story, and I don't want to spoil anything. But we talked a little bit on the red carpet last night and mentioned that my sister is a medical social worker. And so she described, I don't know if I can not spoil it.
Let's just get into it. Yeah, let's go for it.
So she described this particular condition to me, this Munchausen's, and kind of the psychological manifestations and the way you might see it. So you mentioned your friend who sparked the character of Bev. Who sparked the character of Mona? I mean, did you hear a news story, just your personal research, or?
So partially it was my co-writer who brought that kind of angle into it, and it's this kind of medical disorder called Munchausen by proxy, which is what's happening.
Right.
Where a caregiver or a parent makes the child sick for attention. And she had brought that angle, my co-writer Inger brought that angle into the story. And then we just started doing a lot of research into it and thought it would provide a really good way of telling this outsider story, and also a story about parenting, because kind of Russ is on one extreme where his parents don't really care about him.
Right.
And he's kind of just forced to work in the motel. He doesn't really have any friends. And Bev is kind of on the other side of that spectrum where her mother is so focused on her to a really negative degree. And so that kind of allowed us to tell those two stories. And there are a bunch of cases about it. But there's a really fantastic article on BuzzFeed recently about it. And I think there's a doc that was out South by Southwest this year that's also about that same case. And it's really scary and really horrifying. And going into the research was super helpful, but also super dark.
Yeah, disturbing, I'm sure.
Yeah, but really necessary. And there are a couple of really good books about it. There's a book called Hurting for Love that's co-written by a doctor named Herb Schreier, who is actually an advisor on the feature.
Yeah.
But if anyone's interested, I'd really recommend looking at that book. It's really, really thorough.
Yeah, I haven't seen the documentary. I have seen in a few narratives Munchausen's is kind of a side plot. Like the first time I remember seeing it was The Sixth Sense.
Yeah. And
I went to see it with my father, and I've never seen him react to any kind of movie, anything. He's just, whatever, this isn't scary. Da-da. I remember in that scene when it's revealed what's happening to this child, he actually sat back in his chair and recoiled, as a parent to contemplate that someone would do that to their own child. And I think maybe ER or Grey's Anatomy is kind of a side plot somewhere, but I don't know of any other narratives where it's a main line, like a lead character is dealing with this.
Yeah, and so one of the reasons kind of we want to make the feature is to demystify it to some extent, and to, you know, what this mother's doing in the film is really harsh and terrible, but
Absolutely.
But also to give her a little humanity too.
She's ill.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I want my stories to be humanistic in that way, to like
Absolutely.
be able to engage in all of the characters and show that they all have full lives outside of this one single narrative strand.
So I was talking to a horror film director earlier, and I was kind of like, well, you know, talking about mental illness and women and their portrayal on film, and I'm kind of like, this isn't a horror movie though. It's not really a thriller, but it could be, you know, that potential. So like, what kind of genre could we expect for the narrative? I mean, the short, I was kind of like, okay, this is a drama. But the feature, you could take that a lot of different ways.
Yeah, so I kind of considered it a coming-of-age thriller, which I don't know if that's a genre, but that's what I'm calling it.
I think we can make it one.
Yeah, let's go for it. But that thriller aspect is really crucial to it, and I kind of want to, I'm really interested in kind of having the audience be in two places at the same time, where it's like they aren't sure whether this girl is really sick or whether the mother is making her sick. And I find that a really exciting place to put an audience. So that's kind of the genre that I was looking for, but also with some levity to it. I know that sounds like I want it to be coming of age, I want it to be thriller, and I also want it to be funny, and how can it all be that one thing? But I'm really interested in that territory of a strange tone, where there is some sort of levity involved.
Well, I mean, you mentioned in your screening, there were some parts, and I found myself laughing at it too, you know, where Russ is such an awkward kid, but you're also just kind of like, oh, buddy.
I know. And I want the audience to be with him. And I think he is a funny character in that way.
Yeah, he's very sympathetic.
And kind of just naive and just, he wears his heart on his sleeve.
It kind of breaks my heart to think about his possible trajectory in a feature length where you have, you know, a kid. They're both kids. Having to see something like that, see his world kind of broken, see an adult figure just turned on their head. That's rough.
Yeah, I mean, in the film, he's more of an arc, and he kind of comes of age more.
Sure.
But I always considered it kind of like when you're like driving on the highway and you look at and you see small businesses on the highway and you think like, oh, there's a whole life in there, but then you just like pass straight by. And I kind of consider that what happens to Russ in a, you know, it's obviously a much deeper emotional way, but it's like he just kind of glimpses something dark of the world, but has to keep on going.
Yeah. The hotel is then an interesting allegory for that, is he gets glimpses of people's lives and then they move on.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about like crossing thresholds in that sort of way.
Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank
We're
you.
happy for you and looking forward to the feature. Hopefully we'll see you back next year or the year after.
Yeah, thank you so much.